So good afternoon, everyone. As we let everyone in, I'm Audrey. I run the Tech Council, and I am thrilled to listen to this conversation today from an array of markets, as well as, really trying to understand what's happening in marketing. So I'm very anxious to hear about the issues that affect each and every one of these companies. So along with Shelby Mastovich, she is not here with us today, but Allison is, and she has been helping us behind the scenes. But Shelby actually has put together this Chief Marketing Officer series. We used to do it real time, face to face, and this time, of course, we are not. We're just all together here. And I believe we are recording this so that we can share this with others. So, through our series and what we've really learned, we try to showcase the best practices, the kinds of things that people are working on to help transform the marketing landscape, whether it's in big companies or small companies, startups. Very often a startup, one of their early hires often is someone in the marketing, profession. So it's really exciting to be able to hear from all these different companies in terms of what you're grappling with and what the priorities are. So I thank you for that. And I thank our listeners and our guests that are joining us and listening in. So I'm going to just now pass the baton to Christopher Evans. He has been a longtime friend of the Tech Council, and he is now head of brand and director of business development at a company called PMI. And you can see him now on the screen. And they really are a full service creator of broadcast commercials. They do a lot of things, web, social, OTT, video content, motion design, animation, visual effects, color, sound, and, for major brands and even for creative agencies. They also do, which is sort of fun, is that they create feature films and full length documentaries. So they're actually involved in content creation as well on their own. So they're really like a secret powerhouse that's located here in Pittsburgh. So if you don't know them, get to know them, because they really do a lot of different things. And Christopher has like over, 25, I was going to say 250 years of creating award-winning designs. And he's worked in a couple of different places, but it's really usually focused on the same thing: user-centered design, strategic business, marketing, and business development, and just in terms of new markets. That's been pretty consistent in terms of his background. So, and some of the brands that he's worked with have actually been part of our Tech 50. They've been part of lots of different recognition, over the years. And then one of my favorite shows that I get interviewed often, which is an honor. But one of my favorite interviews, and even though I joke with Christopher a lot, it was this when he did this Coffee With. That was a really good interview.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna have to bring that one back. I was like, wow, we really made some sense. And it was great. And so Christopher likes to do that kind of facilitation as well. And that actually was syndicated through a CBS affiliate. So he's been on advisory boards, member at the Health IT Pittsburgh. He's had his hands in life sciences, just lots of things. So I'm going to step aside. I am going to listen, though. I am going to be here. So even if you see me and you don't see my camera, I'm here. And I just can't thank you all enough for the work that you do. I believe that marketing, if you know anything about the passion that I have, I believe that marketing is instrumental in terms of Pittsburgh, in terms of tech companies, and in terms of innovation. And it's not an afterthought, it's integral. So that's really how I operate. So I really appreciate this. And I'm going to be quiet right now, but I promise I'm going to be here. I'm going to take some notes, and I am going to hang out. So I'm passing the baton to Christopher Evans, and thank you, everyone.
Audrey, thank you. And thank you for all you and the council do for our region. We've definitely got to revisit Coffee With. We're going to start taping again in the fall. So hopefully even in person, but if not virtually. And by the way, speaking of fall, I still have a leftover drink ticket from one of these CMO Insights from about 2 years ago that I'm going to cash in when we can all leave our living rooms. It's a true pleasure to be here today. As Audrey mentioned, marketing obviously huge to my DNA and to my passion and to everything we do at BMI Digital too. And today, when I tell you we have a power panel, that is no exaggeration. An incredible representation of organizations across Pittsburgh's marketing scene here. So we are going to be introducing the panelists at this time. And before we do, I just want to encourage all of our guests, our audience today, to think about some great questions that you'd like answered that we may not cover in the first part of the questions, and put them in the chat. Myself, along with Taylor and the team here at PTC, will be fielding those through our guests at the conclusion here of our presentation. And stick around, please, for networking, because we're going to all get a chance to get to know one another. You know, in this virtual environment we all live in, events like this, so critical to being able to get out and talk with people about what you're doing and why you're interested and why you're here today. So do please stick around at the tail end of this. We all are all going to, and look forward to being a part of this. So at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome our panelists, and we're going to ask them individually, after I introduce all of them, a little bit about their backgrounds and to tell us how they got into what they do and how they do it. First off, I'd like to welcome Amy Baker of Othot, Jill Bejger-Frederick of RoadBotics, Sean Smith with Schneider Downs, Jenna Paleski with Niche, and Aaron Mimran of Comcast. Welcome, everyone. So at this time, I'll ask all of our panelists to come off of mute. You should be able to do that. And fantastic. Nice to see you all. A very happy Thanksgiving to you. Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day. Where the heck did that come from? Wow. I guess I really am ready for fall already. How weird. Okay. Well, see if you're paying attention.
I can smell the stuffing now.
You know what it is? Sean, I'm going to reveal a little secret, is down on vacation in Florida. And the last time I was down there, it was Thanksgiving. So I'm jealous. Talk about Freudian slip. How about it? Okay, everyone. Well, welcome. And we are off and running. And in the same order, I'm going to allow yourselves to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how you got there and how you got into the company and the industry you're in. And Jill, we're just going to start with you if you don't mind.
For sure. Hi, I'm Jill Bejger-Frederick. I'm the marketing director at RoadBotics, where we help communities make objective, data-driven decisions about their road networks. And we use artificial intelligence to create some detailed map, unbiased ratings, and some practical tools to save time and taxpayer dollars. And I am a lifelong Pittsburgher. I started at Kennywood and Sandcastle. I moved into a nonprofit, into another startup, into civil engineering and construction, and I'm back here in startup world again. So and thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you to the Tech Council.
You are welcome. And what a company. We can't stop hearing enough about the cool stuff that RoadBotics is doing on a quarterly basis. And we're going to really enjoy hearing from you today. Next up, my friend Amy Baker from Othot. Hi, Amy. Tell us about you and about your path to Othot.
Thanks very much, Chris. I'm happy to, and really happy to be here too. So I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Othot. If you haven't heard about us, we are one of the leading providers of AI for higher education. We help institutions make informed decisions using our AI platform. And we've helped, and especially important now as the pandemic has really made it hard for higher ed to make their goals. We've been able to help our partner institutions achieve an additional $5 million in net tuition revenue. So we're really excited about the results we've been able to drive overall for higher ed, and we're excited to really be at the market at the right time. I've always been in B2B marketing. 30 years ago, I started in B2B marketing at a biotech company in Maryland, and I've never looked back. I absolutely love the sales and marketing relationship. I love the fact that we're so codependent on each other to make sure that we're helping businesses grow together. So I just love B2B marketing. I've been doing it my whole career.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amy, and welcome. Next up, my friend Sean Smith over at Schneider Downs. Hello, Sean. Tell us about you and Schneider Downs.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Smith. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Schneider Downs, which is a accounting and business consulting company. We're one of the 60 largest accounting firms in the United States. I've been here for 14 years, which a lot of you know, that's 75 years in CMO years. But it's actually my second act. Before I joined here, I worked in advertising here in Pittsburgh for about 20 years, where primarily my client base was mostly B2B clients. And as often happens in the small universities of Pittsburgh, I was referred into Schneider Downs. I didn't know about the job. Somebody had recommended me without my being aware of it. And I got a call from the HR department asking me to interview, and it turned out to be just an ideal fit. So, that's Pittsburgh in a nutshell, isn't it?
Sure is. Thank you, Sean. And from accounting and finance, we turn our attention to another burgeoning area of education. Jenna Paleski. Hello, Jenna.
Hello there. Really happy to be here with this great panel and you, Christopher. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Jenna Paleski. I'm the Director of B2B Marketing at Niche. For those of you who haven't heard of Niche, we're 50 million students and families choose their school. And so whether it's, coming onto the platform to research a school that they maybe already know about, or using the platform to find that school that could kind of be the perfect fit, our goal as a company is really on connecting families with the school that is that unique fit for them. And so on the B2B side, we work with over 1,700 schools and colleges, and we really partner closely with them to really kind of get those, those student connections and those family connections from that initial interest all the way through to visiting, applying, and then eventually enrolling. On a more personal note, I've been in B2B marketing for over 10 years, always really in the ed tech space. And, coming from a family of educators, I just love being able to work with schools and colleges and really think about how we can support them. And, just for me, when you think about the emotional decision of deciding where to send your child to school or where to enroll and go to college, it's such a big, important kind of stage of your life. And so I love that at Niche, we really get to be a part of that journey.
And even more so during these interesting times with the pandemic, it is
Sure.
additional pressure and challenges on the students and family. And we'll talk a little bit about that today too, hopefully. Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, with Comcast, Aaron Mimran. Hello, Aaron.
Hello. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. So as mentioned, I'm Aaron Mimran. My role is Regional Vice President with Comcast Business. I always say that we're in the business of business connectivity, and basically what that means is whether it's broadband or fiber internet connection, voice solutions, security, cybersecurity, at every level of the spectrum, be it SMB or mid-market or enterprise grade solutions, that's what we do. We connect businesses to their customers, and think we do a pretty good job of it. I actually started my career, I've been in sales and marketing the majority of my career, some 27-ish years ago. I started in a very sexy product. You might be familiar with it, the printed yellow pages. It's a hot item. And actually, of course, at that time, we still hadn't really been in a commercially viable internet yet. So it was a very important connection between customers and their businesses. The company later evolved to digital paid search. We were Google's largest reseller of AdWords at one point. And then today I find myself, and very lucky to do so, in the Comcast business role. So really most of my career in sales and marketing, and happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, as I mentioned, a power panel, and if that's not demonstrative of it, nothing is. All right, let's get into some of our important questions that we want to cover. And again, some of you will weigh in largely on all of these, and some maybe a little bit more specific. So feel free to take some liberties with the questions. But I think one of the most important questions that all of us have been talking about in marketing of late is the role that marketing is playing right now, presently, in this pandemic time. Is it playing a greater role in lead generation specifically than pre-pandemic for your organization? Cut to the chase. How are you keeping the lights on, and how are you keeping sane and keeping deals come into the funnel? And in no particular order, Aaron, we'll just start with you, since you got to go last on the intros.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would start by saying I think it's changed a bit, right? So I think early pandemic, we really didn't see a major shift in marketing, largely because as an internet provider, when the pandemic hit, I would argue that it was raining and we were selling umbrellas. So we had, hospitals reaching out directly for emergency circuits, COVID testing sites, certainly remote work and work from home became the order of the day. So if anything, we actually went a little quiet on some of our marketing. And then eventually, as the year went on, we recognized the direct need for humanization, whether it was the Xfinity brand or Comcast business brand. You saw a very intentional shift. In fact, we were one of the first companies nationally to proudly place our employees in their homes on national ad campaigns. In fact, several of them right here from Pittsburgh. working from, as you say, from our living rooms and such. And I would just say from a sanity perspective, in the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, Comcast, as we tend to be very operationally excellent, we moved almost 90,000 employees to work from home in a span of 2 weeks' time. And I think because of that, it established the normalcy quickly as to what this environment would be. And since we've been there, I think we've been able to maintain some sanity.
That's great. Thank you. Jenna, how about you folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly for us at Niche as well, COVID was a pivot to us being a digital workforce. Like I'm guessing most folks on the phone kind of went through that change. But I would say, on, our industry side as well, education had to go through a tremendous transformation. And that's really kind of proved to be an accelerant for our business, actually. Students and families are increasingly researching their school choices online. And then COVID itself has really kind of amped up the pace of higher ed's adoption of technology as well. And so, specifically within the marketing space, it's meant that, we as a team have to really kind of think about the stories that we're telling and really kind of make clear that we, who we are as a company, and that as a company, we are really kind of digital natives in this space. We've had a digital first model. It's really what the foundation of our business is built on. And so really kind of getting that message out there and creating some sense of safety that, we've done this before, right? In a world where there's a lot of unknowns right now, this has been the model. We've been following it Niche really since our inception. Specifically in the lead gen space, I think, COVID has changed how we all work too. And so a big part of our focus there has been on, as a new marketing team, of course, revising and updating our lead scoring model and partnering closely with sales and kind of the new day-to-day world. But we've really tried to be thoughtful internally too about what is the messaging we're putting out there in terms of sales and marketing alignment. How do we consistently talk about being one sales and marketing team, that one niche team, and just really making sure that, to keep sane and to keep supportive of each other, we're all running in that same direction.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense for sure. Sean, how about over at Schneider Downs?
Well, there's probably two halves to the story. The first part is, as I mentioned, we're an accounting and business consulting firm. And on March 16th, 2020, all 500 of us were told, go home and work from home and don't come to the office. Well, remember, we're an accounting firm. March 15th is a huge tax deadline, and April 15th is the historic tax deadline. So all of a sudden, we were not able to be in the office. There weren't options. So we were forced to, number one, be able to service our clients. That was the ultimate priority for the first 8 weeks of this, was just make sure we're handling everything they need. And after that, though, and even coinciding to that, was the fact that we do mostly work with businesses, and the scale of what they were being confronted with, the rapid rate of legislative changes and tax law changes, the Secure Act, the CARES Act, the PPP Act, our clients were desperate for that type of information. And so what we really found ourselves becoming as quickly as possible was providing that information in real time. We ramped up. We've done 40 webinars in the last year. We wrote our daily articles on our website, posting content and updates, things you needed to know, whether that's about the cybersecurity elements of working from home, whether that's about loan forgiveness, whether that was about employee retention, tax credits. There's so much that we do so many different services, whether that's tax or audit or cybersecurity or technology consulting or wealth management, transaction advisory. There was always something that we had to share with our clients. And ultimately, what we found is we've done very well on Google as people are searching for this information because we're writing original content in real time. And we've made a lot of new friends, regionally and even outside of our footprint, simply by doing what we thought was the right thing to do, which was keep our clients informed of how these changes and how this crazy environment was going to impact their businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of information needing to be communicated and rapidly changing. Makes perfect sense. Jill, can you tell us about how things might have changed with marketing as far as the pandemic goes?
For sure. I think probably like a lot of other people coming into 2020, we knew when we get our product in front of people, they love it. And so our idea was to get out into the world and do that more. So we had written a lot of abstracts. We were going to a lot of conferences. We were on a lot of panels. We couldn't wait to meet people face to face to show them our technology. And of course, that got completely blown up, plan, up in flames. So we, like most other people, pivoted to a really strong digital plan. We leaned heavily on web events. We leaned onto our partners and helping them help us gather people at these events. And whether they were looks at case studies and different parts of our technology that people just happened to be interested in. So there were some from a brand building perspective that we did, and there were some from a, hey, we need to make that funnel as wide as we can at the top for people who are just getting to know RoadBotics. We leaned really heavily into digital events, and we gave us time also, and that we weren't focused on being at those events and coordinating those events. It gave us time to focus more on social and email marketing and segmenting those audiences and building those sequences so we can reach probably not as many people as we would have in person, but it was a great alternative.
Absolutely. And Amy, can you share kind of the impact that COVID's had on the marketing efforts at your organization?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we all share a lot in common from a move to digital. Certainly, one of the things the team did first was create some content relevant to COVID-19 and populated resources on our website that would be relevant to the higher ed audience. And that got a lot of great traction, probably more than we had done in the past from a content marketing perspective. And then, of course, the second thing we did is we pivoted from what was a 90% event marketing lead gen approach to a 90% digital marketing lead gen approach. The good news is the pivot was probably something that was overdue for the business anyway. And so it gave us the incentive to really build some more foundational content that we needed to build. And I'm happy to say that, a year later now, 90% of our leads are coming from digital and content creation. And then that onus and then that need for event marketing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next and how many of us go back to those trade conferences and event marketing. I predict a big change coming there.
Yeah, I think you're right. In our next question that I'll pose to all of us, talking specifically about leveraging different tools in order to propel the marketing efforts. From our chair, I know we saw a lot of different types of video and commercials being created. What was initially hitting a pause was quickly replaced by, we're still here, here's what we're doing, and here's how you can access our products and services. And more importantly, how we're doing it safely, where applicable. Obviously, hospitality restaurants more deeply hit and closed in many cases. But I'd be curious to find out if there were specific initiatives that you embarked on at the time from either a customer acquisition or branding perspective with video, social media, or email that were particularly effective for you during that time. So we'll put that to the case. Any specific examples that you could care to share with the organization? Again, in a world with what has been without trade shows and events all being virtual. So Sean, maybe you could talk with us a little bit about some of the specific tactics you guys deployed that you saw some success with.
Well, maybe what I'll do is tell you a lesson learned. I thought this is probably something that we discovered. We knew that video could be a powerful way for us to quickly communicate some of these complex legislative changes. And we also knew that a lot of our accountants would rather do that than write, film and let them just talk. So the big thing we learned, though, was timing is everything. The speed to market is essential. When PPP came out with the round 2, we broke that into about, I think, 7 different videos, and we took our time. They were well crafted. We put them up there, but by the time we put them online, it was late. People had found that information. They were great videos, but it was they really weren't time sensitive. Now when the employee tax retention credit opportunity came up there, same day we just got 2 guys on camera. They explained the whole thing, put it up there. We had 500 views in 2 days, which led to a great opportunity for our business. What we really learned is, maybe in the same way we're doing this, everybody is in this remote world. Speed can take over polish right now. Being able to be responsive and timely and turning around quickly. And so what we've discovered is, had I stopped after the PPP videos, I might say, a video doesn't work. It's too much work. But we kind of figured out that we had to go faster. And we have discovered people do like videos. They have higher click-through rates. And that's been, I'm sure that's music to your ears, Christopher. But
it was a loaded question after all, wasn't it?
Yeah, see, I'm a plant. But the point being, we did discover that there are technologies that are new. They don't take the place of face-to-face meetings in rooms with people, but we're not ready to be face-to-face right now. And so the best thing we can do is be genuine, be sincere, and be prompt.
Yeah, I think hopefully, Sean, we'll all see as we move through vaccinations and as the pandemic evolves, it won't be an either or, but rather a blend. You know, events may be more of a hybrid of virtual and in person, and perhaps for more broad audiences, which is kind of a follow-up to this that we can get into as well. But I'm interested, Jill, to hear from your chair, video, social media, anything specifically that you can point to where you poured on the juice and you were pleased with the results?
Well, one of the things that we did that I thought was pretty creative and we ended up reaching a lot of people, we created a virtual conference booth. So seeing some of the conferences, I feel like everybody was so in the same boat. When you went on to see like what these conferences were doing, a lot of them were like, we don't know what we're doing yet. Stay tuned, we'll let you know. Or you would go and it would be, the registration link would be blank. And we were like kind of hanging out there. And then when they kind of started getting their act together, it was like they weren't very sensitive to the fact that like, listen, my budget shrunk. In all honesty, some of these events were the same price as they were if we were showing up in person. And, we all know you're not going to get that kind of value out of them. You're not going to get that kind of like interaction that you get at an in-person. And so we came up with the idea to create a virtual conference booth and kind of put in all the interactive pieces that you would find in our conference booth. And that way on Twitter and social media, we did a little video about it. We could kind of still hop on the hashtags for these larger conferences, but that we weren't going to pay $2,500 to actually exhibit at, but we could say, hey, you know what? We're sorry that we're going to miss you this year at PWX 2020, but come visit our virtual booth. And we still gave out t-shirts. You just had to fill out a form to fill out t-shirts. You could still have access to all the things. And even though that stuff was always, it exists on our website, you could come and find it anyway. It was kind of like a different tweak of a format where we could say, oh, hey, come see our virtual conference booth. And we did get, a lot of interest out of it. So I thought that was one kind of adaptation that we made early on to battle the no trade show. And maybe it was just like the pain of losing trade shows.
Sure.
We were just like, let's grasp onto this and build a virtual trade show booth. But
yeah,
it was one pretty creative idea, I thought.
I think it's very creative. And I think that the conversations I've had throughout the year, a lot of organizations experimenting with this. And to Sean's point, even doing something, even if it isn't exactly what you would in an ideal world have, was better than doing nothing. And I think this year we're going to see people doing more of it and perhaps taking it to the next level. Now that we know you can do things, adding a little bit of more features and functionalities, the virtual networking rooms. We did an annual conference tip to toe for a very large major corporation here in town. It was their first foray into it, and candidly ours as well. Went off great. Similarly, virtual fundraisers for a couple of our charity and nonprofit clients. It was that or nothing at all. And I do think the production quality matters. It always matters from our chair. But just the being out there and doing things, I think, was so mission critical for so many brands to stay connected and top of mind in front of their customers and partners and employees as well for internal comms. Excellent. Thank you, Joe. That was a really awesome example also. All right, Aaron, how about you guys? I'm sure there's a number of examples you could share with us. I'm excited to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so a couple of things. I really call out two. So with Comcast, you would expect a very sort of, in the box national strategy relative to social. However, the really good news is we're kind of broken up into 15 geographic regions. And so we have a lot of autonomy. One of our regions is headquartered here in Pittsburgh. And so we have a lot of autonomy on local or hyper local social marketing specifically. So again, we went a little quiet as soon as the pandemic hit. We really wanted to get the lay of the land. But then shortly after, we actually highlighted businesses that were Comcast business customers leveraging our products, namely our advanced voice solutions. I think of Walnut Grill as an example, who was stuck in a takeout only type mode. They had to quickly pivot. They relied on our technology. And so it was our way of saying, not only do we want to say thank you, but we also want to put out press releases around you to help promote you. Branch Creative is another example who we highlighted here on the Tech Council, not long into the pandemic. And that was just a way to say, how do we take a very large brand, such as Comcast Business, bring it into this very hyper-local way, while also nourishing our relationships. The other thing, which is a little bit of a complete 180 on the social media, probably not what you would expect for an answer, but I have approximately 70 salespeople that sit in my organization throughout the region that are field sales professionals, right? Their job is to get out, as Sean was saying, get face to face. They went to virtual selling from their bedrooms overnight. And so how do we make that effective? We actually leverage LinkedIn Navigator. And I suspect many people probably are familiar with Navigator. It is a paid option. We had historically we had used it on one side of the business, but not the other. But boy, it's been a real difference maker with respect to authentic connectivity, in that kind of social space, without driving, our prospects crazy, and doing it, I think, quite professionally. So I really think those two have been very helpful for us.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And what a powerful tool it is. And like anything else, Aaron, when used properly, when not used in an invasive manner, having those, telling and not selling kind of conversations in order, really spot on. It's like, it's mission critical because people are bombarded and you don't have the ability to do that handshake in a trade show. I live it. Many of us do. And as a marketer, you feel for your sales team as well, because they've lost that ability to make that eye contact in a room and make those, that impact about how amazing the products and services are. So being able to do that virtually, I think is very important. And using tools like LinkedIn Navigator, great example there. Amy, would you care to share with us some of the stuff you and your team got into where you saw some success or were pleased with the results?
Absolutely. There were a few things that we did. One of them was actually more of a product strategy pivot. And we did that because, of course, Harrod was under really strict budget constraints. And so one of the things we did is we wanted to get the AI into the hands of our audience. And so we built a budget-friendly version of it so that people could still access the great insights that they needed to be able to understand how to make the best decisions they could for each individual student. And then we marketed that using a very short explainer video when we launched the product in the September timeframe. So a little bit of a mix of both answers to your questions is we wanted to make sure that we're listening to the market, understanding what they needed, and then we needed to be able to explain that in a way that they could embrace it more easily than, of course, if we were face-to-face.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Really great examples. And I'm sure our audience is excited to hear about this. Again, as we evolve through the pandemic, I anticipate we'll be doing a lot of these similar things this year in new and deeper ways. Be interesting to reconvene and hear from all of you a year from today how that's evolved. Exciting stuff for sure. All right, so let's take a slight pivot and talk a little bit about, again, I would consider it to be sort of a topical area for organizations right now. User-generated content. Wow, the consumer has so much power over the brand anymore, right? We've talked for many years as marketers about having two-way conversations, and now it's like, can we still control our brand, right? And how can we leverage, power users like that? So, is user-generated content something that's on your mind, that you're working with, that you're paying attention to, and have you seen anything interesting there? Again, no particular order. Jill, I'll start with you.
For sure. For us, our user-generated content, just because of the audience that we deal with, which is typically public works directors, community leaders, or civic engineers, it is often really prompted, as in if our partners have actually put something out there that they're working with, if we are overwhelmed and overjoyed and we can't wait to share it and build on it, typically it's something that we're asking, hey, can we share that we've worked with you? Can we share? And then they see the result of it, and then they in turn reciprocate. So for us, user-generated content is not, something super, literally when we see it, we're like, oh, surprise, oh my gosh, this is so exciting, let us share it. It's not anything that we're like, oh, we better sift through all this user-generated content to figure out what we're going to use. It's definitely more of like a prompted partnership kind of thing for us.
Like it. I like it a lot. Amy, user-generated content. What are you doing with it? What are you seeing? How are you fielding it?
I would say for us, it's not an area that we have a ton of strength in, the user-generated content. I would say what they're usually taking the insights from us and then taking it inside their institution and doing things with it. And of course, that's some of those are strategic decisions that are sort of private to them. So I would say for the most part, that's actually not an area we've spent a lot of time. We're really at this point trying to get them to best practices to help them understand how to get some internal buy-in to some of the change management that they need to do. And I think what they've really missed the most is their ability to actually network with their peers. And we're trying to create more ways to do that networking so that they can be sharing those best practices amongst themselves. And so that's really still more of a conversation than it is content generation, I think. But that's probably the best answer I've got to that one.
Sure. I like it. I think it's awesome. Jenna.
Yeah, so we are a dual-sided marketplace, and so the content we produce is both across the user side of students and families looking at the platform, and then also kind of our our day-to-day partnerships with schools and colleges. And so a little bit more on the user side of the house, one of the things our brand team has really leaned into is cultivating our student ambassadors, and they've built up a really great set of videos and stories that are leveraged across TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. As you can imagine, the admissions and marketing officers are not really the end users of TikTok. And so
really?
story on the B2B side. So I would say, we do have that great momentum, and we are seen, especially on the user side, as being a place where students can go and kind of say, what does the college search look like, right? And they can really hear it from their peer. And that's been a lot of traction for us. A little bit more in B2B, we do annual rankings for K-12 schools, colleges, places to live. And where we see a lot of UGC come out of that is really community excitement around kind of sharing, hey, Squirrel Hill was ranked, X place to live in Pittsburgh, or, Woodside Academy was shared as one of the #1 schools in the country, right? Those kind of takeaways in terms of sharing that kind of content, sharing those takeaways within their local communities. And so we see a lot of schools kind of sharing that messaging, or even in some cases, maybe a superintendent sharing those niche rankings with their local school community as a way of kind of providing feedback. And so we do our best to kind of provide collateral to schools as a way of saying, hey, here's a way to kind of showcase your niche grade, or here's a best schools badge that you can either put on your website or maybe on a letter that you send out to your parents. And so like Jill shared, we kind of do our best to help enable and create those opportunities where possible.
I think there are a lot of studies out there that probably support that a prospective student really wants to see that they can fit in with the campus environment, the students themselves. Do I see myself sitting with these folks, talking with them? Can I fit in? Do they look like me? Do they feel like me? I think there's a really human element to that decision for children and families, young adults and families. Really interesting stuff. Thank you. Sean, how about user-generated content in finance and accounting? Tell me a little bit about what you guys are seeing there.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that clinically we're doing it by definition what you talk about. What we do know is that we have a lot of market segments, particularly amongst industries, automotive, construction, energy, manufacturing, nonprofit. And those clients are fiercely interested in what their peers have or are interested in as well, whether that's compensation baselines or similar phases that or situations they're going through. We have created, and this one would be content, but we've created opportunities of dialogue, for instance, to pull together the CFOs of all of our museum or arts and humanities clients. Put them in a room and, as they used to say, like the gym teacher, roll the ball out and let them play. We're not even facilitating the content. We're just providing the venue for all these CFOs to sit down and exchange. how are you getting through the pandemic? And what we've discovered is they're very appreciative of that, and that's great. They're exchanging ideas, and I don't even know if that's marketing, probably client service, and it probably isn't user-generated content. But what it is doing is at least identifying how can the knowledge of our clients benefit other clients that we have, and so we're encouraging them to share that way.
I like that too. Very cool. Good example. Aaron, how about at Comcast?
Yeah, so I would say similar to Jill's answer and others, I think and to Amy as well, our primary client base for Comcast Business are CIOs and CTOs. So we're not going to see a lot of user-driven content from them. I think similar to Sean's answer, we try to leverage that community through thought leadership, through influencer marketing, tactics such as that, where they can bring to bear their problems and how connectivity and a solid network will make a difference. But I would say other than that, pretty light on the user content, just given the audience.
It makes a lot of sense. At this time, I'd like also to encourage our audience members out there in cyberspace to think about some questions you'd like addressed at the conclusion of our Q&A here. Feel free to fill up the chat with some of the things that are on your mind that we may not be covering. All right, let's take a little bit of a pivot. 2020, what a year. Let's try to forget about it for a minute, but yet let's remember for the sake of learning, so much happened in 2020. Wow. It was like 10 years in 1 year, and most of it not great. Our country had a rough, or the world had a very rough time, and we're not quite through it, but at least certainly there's a lot of optimism on the horizon with some of the things we're seeing in the market and with vaccinations and with these cases going down. But let's talk about another element of 2020. I think there has been a dramatic shift in how brands are reimagining the human side of the brand. Cause-based marketing, the civic impact, the social impact of your brand in the marketplace. It's a delicate thing. We're not necessarily talking about selling or marketing products, but what brand purpose your organization has in the world. I'd like to open it up to each of you at your level of discretion and comfort in talking about this. No particular order. Brand purpose, is that something that's on your mind? What steps are you taking to sort of get that message out there? And I knew once I let you guys have the control of the microphone, no one's going to answer. So Jill, you're up. And you're on mute. Come on.
No, I'm off mute. I'm ready.
They're going to take away my drink ticket for next fall,
Yeah, really. So for our, as far as our brand promise, the thing that comes close to a cause-based thing is that we are dealing with governments and municipalities primarily, and civil engineers that deal with governments and municipalities, and it's people's tax dollars. And so, everybody has a concern and they want their tax dollars to be spent efficiently, and they want there to be a forward-thinking plan about it. And that's been kind of like one of the things that we've based our kind of done in our cause-based marketing. Also, using our technology, you can also build long-range pavement plans and maintenance plans that in the end save a lot of resources. And so that's another thing that we could kind of hitch our wagon to. Based on what we do, really like tugging at heartstrings is extremely difficult. Here's what I got. People hate potholes. They're painful, they're awful, they cost a lot of money. But, as far as like getting anyone, to really be like, dang, that cause, the struggle is real for road assessments.
Sure. And that's well said. And, I think what you've hit on is something perhaps even deeper, which is brand authenticity. Not trying to have a message or be in a lane that doesn't make sense for your purpose. And that in itself is identifying and communicating an authentic brand promise. So excellent stuff there. Jenna, Amy, Sean, Aaron, anything else on brand purpose on your end? I'd be interested to throw it to the floor.
I would just jump in and just say, we've seen quite a shift with our branding, very bold, very purposeful in the last several years. When I think about when I started 7 years ago and how conservative our branding was, It's really quite a difference. And two things come to mind. One is a program called RISE, which is a direct response to the social injustice issues that we saw and continue to face. RISE stands for Representation, Investment, Strength, and Empowerment, specifically for BIPOC businesses. And so Comcast made a $100 million 3-year investment because these businesses were just so hard hit and continue to be hard hit in COVID. And so our response to that is to say $75 million in direct contributions, $25 million in media support for businesses seeking tech makeovers, who need connectivity, who need media makeovers through our sister company, Effective, formerly Comcast Spotlight. The second quick thing I'll just call out is that, you know, you hear about these stories where mothers are taking their daughters to a Taco, this is literally a story, a Taco Bell parking lot to get the free Wi-Fi so that, you know, she and her daughter can sit and take a class on her laptop. And so our commitment to that is not just only to throw money at it, but rather stand up actual places called lift zones where we're using community centers like YMCA or small businesses. We're committing to over 1,000 of them where we're going to, you know, build them with Wi-Fi.
Awesome.
And so that it's a safe place for students to attend, or where otherwise, you know, them being at home maybe not be safe. And so this is probably the boldest year we've ever had with cause-based marketing. And frankly, it's really making all of us as employees quite proud.
Thank you, Aaron. Those are wonderful illustrations. And it just goes to show, again, brand authenticity and where you are in the world and what you're serving has a big influence on the ability to deliver on those promises. The rest of our panelists, anyone else wish to weigh in on brand purpose and or cause-based marketing?
Well, I kind of hate to go after Aaron. Aaron, that's a great, that was a really great response. I'm really impressed with Comcast for doing all of that. You know, Schneider Downs has the Western Pennsylvania's largest practice for nonprofits. And so in other words, we work with an awful lot of sizable nonprofits in Western Pennsylvania, which makes it very hard for us to have a cause of the day or to have a singular thing, you know, scouting for food or any of these other single causes. But we're very upfront about our mission statement, which is working together every day to make our firm, clients, and communities better. And when you can distill what you do down to 12 words, which we've done, and you can put it out there on our website, on our business cards, and everything that we do, that is really a mandate for our firm, for our shareholders, for our managers, for everyone who works within the firm. We have an organization called SD Cares, which is volunteers from the firm that identify what can we do out in the community, whether that is going to the food bank and packing boxes. It's really focused on time, a commitment of volunteering time more than it is volunteering dollars. But then also equally, we commit a certain amount of the marketing budget actually every year to put back into the community in a lot of ways. Maybe that's been more put forward this year because it's harder to do the volunteer, the in-market, in-person volunteering opportunities. And we're chomping at the bit to get the world back right size so that we can start doing those things again. But it's very easy for us to identify, is this something we want to do in the community? And it's defined by, does this make it better? Can we make it better? And better is a key word there, whether that's for the firm or clients or for the communities.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else before we go to our next question?
I do have one thing that I wanted to add, that one comment to make is that from a startup community perspective, I think the cause-based brand piece can be really hard to carve out time and energy to do. And I guess I almost want to give some of the startup community a little bit of a pass on that, because I kind of want to say the phrase, you know, charity begins at home. And sometimes your first cause is to make the business grow and to make sure you're paying attention to how you're growing the business, and you have to put all of your resources into that first. And then when you're a more mature business, you probably hopefully gain the luxury of the cause-based marketing when you have a little bit more to work with. And so part of me wanted to just sort of say, hey, don't feel bad. Comcast is a great example, of course, comes from years and years of maturity and a really great depth and a lot of great success. And not everybody is there yet, I guess.
Yeah,
comment.
absolutely. At this time, I'm noticing in the chat, we have a question that I'd like to take, and then we'll come back to some of the others. Debbie Stockdale asks, and this is open to all of you. Marketing people are in general very social, high energy, interactive characters that do great in group settings and brainstorming sessions. Did you have any challenges motivating your teams and keeping them engaged in a remote environment? And if so, how did you combat those challenges? Great question, Debbie. Open it to the floor. And I'm sorry, I believe you're on mute. Go ahead, Jill.
Listen, I have a fantastic team, but I think going into work from home 5 days a week, then month, then many months, then a year. I think one of the struggles that I had was how do we structure this day? How do we structure check-ins? How do we hold each other accountable? Because there's a lot of hours in the day. You can't be checking in. You can't be, just like you don't want to micromanage in an office, you don't want to micromanage digitally either. It's almost just as invasive because now people are, in their homes and, unfortunately it's life. Like people have other responsibilities. And especially when you're sitting in your house, it's easy to integrate those with your workday. So I think the biggest struggle I had at first was how do I structure our day enough that we're all checking in and we all know what each other is working on and what we need help with, and how do we still give that freedom so there's time to concentrate and get work done and not just fill up a day full of Zooming.
Really good perspective.
Yeah,
Other
I would
folks,
kind of
Jenna?
build on what Jill shared. And, I came into my current role over the course of the pandemic. And so for me, it was partially bringing a team together in a remote environment, and then also kind of managing to the issues that Jill just spoke to. And I will say some things that have been really successful for us is, we are a very active group of Slack users that has been really effective at both kind of moving projects along in a low stakes way of getting feedback, but also creating room for some of just like the more ongoing human dialogue of just being able to share a link. And then one of the things that I'm really proud of is, Niche has gone out of their way to really kind of create, sort of try to like artificially create water cooler moments that are not happening because we're not in person. And so our people team has put some things in place, like we do a brew buddies, which is where you are paired up with someone else across the company and have a chance to have a half-hour coffee with them over the course of the week. And through things like that, we've been able to create kind of nice connections between someone in marketing and someone in data, someone in marketing and someone in front end. And I'm proud that we're doing some of that just to kind of open up the lines of dialogue, where we're now in a world where those teams don't cross paths on a weekly basis. And so kind of thinking about some opportunities for programs like that.
That's excellent.
So I have a quick question. Can I jump in?
Sure. The floor is yours.
So Jenna, I know that your company has hired how many people during this pandemic?
Yeah, so we went from about 110 to 160.
So you have 50
had dramatic change, yeah.
Right, so you have 50 people you've never met in real time.
Yeah, I'm one of those for sure. And so that's been really being thoughtful with the onboarding process. We have kind of established meetings of where new hires can get to know each of the various teams and hear about areas of focus. Everyone spends time with our leadership team to kind of hear, their roadmap and their perspective. And that's something I would say, is something that's working well. But of course, as the world changes, we're always monitoring and looking for how we can improve it and make people feel welcome when you're onboarding in a not normal year. So,
yeah, well said.
Has anyone?
Audrey, I think you've touched on something that's really important, which is, if I were to look at, I'm very proud of how my team's been productive over throughout this.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer wasn't in 2020. The reason that's working is because of 2018, 2019.
Right.
We are a team, and we are a fiercely connected group that's invested over the years in all kinds of things, whether that's happy hour, just being there for each other. And quite frankly, I just have really nice people who work on our team. And that got us through those first few months. And we tried things that worked. We tried things that didn't work. We have a weekly happy hour, which is a great opportunity for us to have something social. We have a weekly status meeting. So we separate the work and the social. But the other half of that is, it's funny when you say, how do you motivate them? I don't feel I've had to, because of the investment that we've had in each other.
Yeah.
Could that sustain itself for years? I don't know. Our firm also, we probably have hired about 50 people since going remote. And we've thought about that often. I know I have an intern that's going to be starting soon, and I'm concerned about that. How do you replicate that? What I think is our culture is the jewel of our organization, and that's hard to replicate. But I will tell you that every single week, I begin on Monday saying, how do we do it again this week? Because there's going to be a dilution of how that works over time, and it takes a lot of energy.
Hey, I would just, if I could, just add just real quick. So to Amy's point, there are advantages of large versus smaller companies, and a disadvantage of a large company is this. When you have large buildings with a lot of people that are accustomed to seeing each other, where the culture is largely physical. And so what we found is that when we went to the virtual environment, what that walk down the hall became an invite on your calendar.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people are seeing that, right? So where all this white space exists on your calendar is now filled with appointments.
Amen.
And so what I've tried to do, and so there's a lot of things that we've attempted to do culturally, but just as a leader, what I've tried to do is to focus on what not to do. And that is, for example, as you pivot from these meetings, all these meetings are different topics, and you pivot. And if you come in hair on fire, you're going to create unnecessary stress. And so just mindful examples of just being mindful of your own energy that you're bringing into the meeting. And one thing that we've started recently is opening meetings with literally 5 minutes of gratitude. Just go around the horn, share one thing that you're grateful for. And as silly as that may seem, there's something that happens in the brain where you reset the pattern from the previous meeting that you were on. And we just did it this morning, and we just had a fantastic meeting. Now, people on my team may be watching this and saying they disagree, but it seemed fantastic. But joking aside, we found that to be effective.
No, that's great.
Those are super examples.
So how about anyone else? I'm going to jump in really quick, but there are questions, and
we do have
sensitive to time. So Christopher, you want to?
Yeah, let's go to a few more of the chat ones, and certainly, again, a reminder to all that we're going to stick around after the program ends for some networking, and I think we should continue these conversations because I think all of you really opened up the human element on this about how we're staying sane through all of this, and it's interesting to hear the correlations with some of the things we're doing here, both internally and with our clients, like Slack. We're big dog people and animal people down at PMI. We bring the animals when possible on the Slack meetings, and the Zoom calls internally, and it humanizes the experience a little bit. And it's so important in this time when we can't be with each other in normal ways. So I love hearing this. Okay, so let's go back to our chat for a moment. We've got a flood of some great new questions. This one comes from Ken Acer, open to the floor, and it's a follow-up to the last question asked, which is another truism, especially in B2B marketing, is that the people are your brand. For companies who have a greater proportion of newer employees, either because of rapid growth or higher turnover, how do you see marketing's role to ensure a consistent company culture and brand consistency? Great question, Ken. Open to the floor.
If I can start on this one. I'm just like Jenna, joined the business during the pandemic and during the lockdown. And so I joined a business that already had some marketing happening. But one of the first things that I did was create a core messaging document that kind of got to what's the heart of the message that we should be repeating over and over and over again until we are nauseous because we've said it times. And so I think that was part of trying to create some brand consistency for the business. We also then went off and added to the visual depth of our brand at the same time. So I do think those are two areas where it's super important to make sure that, number one, everyone's saying the same thing, which as we're remote was very easy to get off track because you weren't hearing everybody saying the same things. You were in your own conversations, typically with prospects and customers. And so I do think something that centers the business around, here are the core messages, here's what we're best at, here's the value we bring to our prospects, and here's the benefit to them of being one of our customers. I think was really critical in making sure that everyone was saying the same thing and that we all held the same values.
Excellent.
Mhm.
I would just say on a level down from what Amy shared as well, that was, some of the work we've done too. And we've even sort of started to build out some things like brand glossaries, which is of course really important for the sales team when they're out. We want to have the same language they're speaking versus on the website, but then also really making sure that we're sharing that with the product organization as well, just because so much of the language we use internally becomes our external language. And so just this sort of connection of making sure that, when we're writing our goals for the quarter, we're using the same terminology and, to Amy's point, the same sort of brand and mission thought that's being expressed in marketing, that's being expressed in sales. And so a lot of that for us, like Amy, has gone into building out that brand collateral and making it really transparent across the org.
Excellent.
My gosh, Jenna, I love brand glossary. You win.
Can we get t-shirts with that made up?
I
Jill?
am like writing that down. Like that is fantastic.
Excellent. Anyone else wish to care to weigh in on that before we go to our
Something-
next question?
I'm sorry.
Please,
Something
sir,
that
go
we've
right
done that I'm pretty proud of at Schneider Downs is we created what we call the SD standard, which is a pattern of 6 expected behaviors that we've learned from our client surveys that we do really, really well. We're very responsive. We're very proactive. We take new ideas to our clients. And so rather than call it necessarily a brand promise, it's just the standard of expectation for all of our employees that we actually created as a marketing piece. And part of the onboarding process is to walk everybody at the firm through those 6 expected behaviors, because we think they help define, our tagline is big thinking, personal focus. And so when you put personal focus on your card, you better live up to that. And so as a result, we do make that part of the onboarding. With that being said, that's a marketing piece as a printed card. It's really brought to life by, all these accountants and consultants don't work for me. They're not in my department. I help create the pieces that go into the onboarding. But that's really flowing through the rest of the, through our shareholders and through our managers. Each level needs to communicate that down. And we work really hard at that. And I know that that's been a particular point of emphasis over the last 12 months as we brought on so many new people, just to recognize those people. Maybe you have a new guy back in the old days, you take him to lunch once a week or something. Well, now you got to call them every day, or someone from the team needs to call those people every day and keep them engaged and keep them feeling as if they're part of the community. And Jenna and Amy, it sounds like for both of you coming on board that way, hopefully that's reflective of how you'd want to be treated as a new employee.
Excellent.
I would just wrap up and just say, I think it's a great question, Ken. And I would, at every opportunity, invite the employees into the process. Invite them into, to the extent that you can actually show their faces and share their quotes, and invite them into your marketing itself, because the more they feel naturally engaged and involved, the more that brand grows. And I'll just share a really very fast example. In our region, I mentioned there are 15 regions within Comcast. Many years ago, we started off with this rally cry that we wanted our both our customers and our employees to be loud and proud promoters of Comcast. And we aligned that with the NPS survey around our customer experience. And so we measure our employees on the same scale that we measure our customers. And so naturally, that loud and proud rally cry starts to carry over, of course, into social, into conversations, and employees actually feel part of the process. And so the more collaboration you can create, the more organic it can be, the more that'll show up to your customers.
Thank you, Aaron. Now, I know initially we had scheduled to stop at 4 o'clock, but I'm going to continue with a few more of these crowdsourced questions. I'll hold off on some of mine to talk offline. And again, if we have time, we'd like to stick around for networking after, so encourage you all to do that. Next question comes from Charlene Nagy. She is referring to the question of hiring people. To the floor. With the new remote configurations, are you hiring more people within your organizations from outside the region who will actually remain remote? For example, in her organization, they've added 4 team members, 1 in Argentina. So do you see your hiring changing as far as geographically because of the new working configurations, or have they just all been in the region? Anyone who's hiring, that is.
Well, there are tax implications to that.
Indeed.
That's actually factored into our thoughts. There are some areas of our profession that are incredibly competitive and hard to find. It's very hard to find IT auditors and cybersecurity experts right now, and we would be silly not to look more remotely to find them. You know, we are exploring what those mean. There are some specific states for which you really do have to be careful. If you have a full-time employee there working, you have to comply with their laws and such. And we're an accounting firm, so we're paying attention. But there are some. It has opened up some of the areas that are particularly number one challenge in our profession is talent acquisition in the specific niche areas of consulting. So it does broaden it up there, and we are open to it. Argentina is pretty impressive, though.
I would say so. I wouldn't mind being there right now, in fact. Maybe after the pandemic. Okay. Anyone else on hiring configurations? Anyone else want to go on that?
I'll comment on that. I think the one thing that this has caught the whole remote working, and most of us, I think, have felt it is as if there was somebody who was in a traditional mindset and thought, oh, we absolutely are never going to be out of office. We're all going to be here in the same place. That's out the window now, right? I've had employees actually move in the middle of the pandemic to another location, even knowing and saying, hey, we might not have a remote policy, but they moved. So at that point, what happens then? And so I think it really has opened our eyes up to the whole world as your opportunity for talent, which I think is a good thing. But I also think too, it's important, and I always bang this drum, which I think is sometimes not always recognized for companies that have come into Pittsburgh from outside the city, that there's so much great talent here that it would be a shame if suddenly we opened up our hiring, we're forgetting how great the talent is in this city. And I think it's often completely underestimated how much great talent there is here because of all the universities and because of the other technology companies that are here. I hope that when people open up hiring to other locations, it's not because they're looking past Pittsburgh, because I think there's still a lot of great talent here.
That's very well said, Amy. And we do want to foster that Pittsburgh first mentality wherever possible. Anyone else on the hiring question before I go to another question from the chat? Okay. Next one comes in from Danielle Camiso. Danielle asks our group, are there any B2B email marketing tips or strategies that have been more effective than others for you in 2020 or 2021? Email marketing strategies, anyone? Okay, apparently no one's using email anymore.
I'm happy to jump in on that.
Please do, Jenna.
I would say the lens that and the goal I always aim for with email marketing is as personalized as possible. And really, while automation is incredibly effective, using the tools to really create that sense of personalization, sharing data points that are specific to accounts or individuals, and always kind of having that as the end goal. And so for us, I think those have been, the campaigns and the strategies that have been most effective as places that really speak to what is happening at my school. And, for us, the difference between, a superintendent at a school district in Texas with what a charter school is facing in New York City are just vastly different challenges. And so we always want to make sure that both in terms of the data that we're providing and the insights that we're surfacing to those accounts, that we're going into it with that mindset. But I would say for us, being a data first company and looking for opportunities to share data has been probably the common thread through our more successful email campaigns this year.
It's excellent. Thank you.
Kind of to tag on to what Jenna said, I think sometimes when you look at your CRM or your email database, it seems overwhelming to start segmenting it to do the personalization that Jenna was talking about. But I think that we have found that once you kind of get started, it just keeps rolling. So I would say don't be afraid to get started segmenting so you're able to build those personalized messages.
Okay. Love that. Go ahead, please.
That I would make is the creativity of the subject line becomes ever more important because everyone's inbox is becoming so overwhelmed because this is the only way we can market to anyone, right? And so I would say that where we gotten the best bang for our buck was a couple of really creative subject lines, either a webinar subject or even an email subject, suddenly it was like, wow, that really worked, and let's do that again. And that got someone's attention, and maybe sometimes it got someone's attention and they didn't like it, but I got that response too, and that's okay. And so I do think that that's where everyone had to dig a little deeper into their creativity and say, okay, I've got to find some way to break through this because there's so much coming in, and we had to be more thoughtful, maybe think about Saturdays, maybe think about Sundays. I know in previous lives, those days are equally as productive, actually, because people are not overwhelmed by how much mail they're getting in. And so don't be afraid of doing some off days too, where people might be just cleaning up their inbox, and you might really get attention there.
And they've had a chance to put the baby down to bed or take a breather or pour a glass of wine. I'm amazed often how I get responses back from people on LinkedIn. To Aaron's earlier point, on LinkedIn, Navigator, and or regular messages in the evening, and I'll quickly respond to them if I have any energy left, just because I know maybe they'll, so great examples there. Anyone else on this? This is an excellent question, Danielle, and thank you for putting it forward.
Speaking to Amy's point, our content expert did a phenomenal thing by setting up a bunch of A/B tests where everybody was allowed to pick subject lines. And we did it kind of like week after week to one of our business development lists that we were promoting web events to. And it was really interesting to see because, our designer comes up with much different ideas than what our social media expert does. So it was kind of fun for our team to watch that play out and come up with some creative subject lines and see who would, win.
Excellent.
Okay. I think ultimately,
no, go ahead, Sean.
No, just real quickly, I was going to say, ultimately, I think a lot of it is come down to that call to action. We're bombarded, we're inundated. I'm down here in Florida. I open my email, and the first 30 emails from people I don't want to talk to. And we're doing the same thing. We're subjecting people to this stuff. And so if there isn't a compelling reason or a compelling call to action for them, here's an article explaining tax retention credits that might be of interest to you. That gives somebody an opportunity to click through, come to our page, and hopefully tell us about themselves, and we can turn that into a dialogue. But I guess that would be my one thing, particularly being remote the last year. I'm very, very mindful of limiting the amount of the emails we do, unless we really do have a story to tell and a compelling reason for them to respond. Even still, my open rates can be 15%. And so I think sometimes when people think of it that way, they say, well, that means I need to send a lot more, to get more responses. But the reality is sometimes you're just annoying people. We have great content. Jill, you reference your content generator person. That's what we do. We have really good content. We try to share that, and that seems to be compelling. And we've earned a reputation for people to say this is worth reading because they're going to learn something. And that's what we're trying to do.
It's almost a new chapter in permission marketing, isn't it? When you really think
absolutely, Christopher.
Yeah. And again, to the content point, making it interesting, making it informative, making it visual, capturing attention in new ways, and most of all, making the content relevant. Excellent perspectives. I want to make sure anyone else has a chance to weigh on this before I go to the next one. And again, keep them coming, folks. The chat is lit. Okay. Going on to Craig Campbell. Hello, Craig. First off, Craig shares some feedback with us. He says, wow, and thank you. Everyone's done a fantastic job articulating brand and business challenges during COVID. He'd like to ask us a back of the house question about the role of business intelligence and sales automation. Got to get some hardcore tech in there. Thank you, Craig. And second, please touch on measurement and how that's communicated to remote teams. So if anyone can share with us the role of BI and sales automation and measuring.
I'll just jump in there. I think so first of all, it's very important. I think a great question. First and foremost, we have BI reports for our BI reports. And so we certainly, as we have been tracking the pandemic, we have definitely seen shifts for sure, relative to certain take rates on some products, an explosion of take rates on others. And so I think to your question, Craig, is, first of all, what do you do with it? And I think the first bit of advice I would give is to not knee-jerk react, because we are seeing such dramatic shifts still, in this environment. And I think it's really important that you sit down with your team, walk through the implications and, what does it mean to both your team and the marketplace. With respect to communicating, I think it's really important too then to, make sure that what I have found is that you may understand it at a level that the rest of the team doesn't. And a remote environment is a little harder to get that connection and that connectivity. So take your time with it, seek for understanding, make sure that that folks are really capturing what this data actually means. And as I said before with the marketing piece, seek their input. To some degree, you almost have to slow down a little bit with this BI to speed up. And that's what we've certainly found in our case.
Excellent. Who else wishes to comment? If anyone on that one.
I mean, I would say one of the things about the automation and metrics pieces, it depends upon your tech stack, right? And how easily are they knitted together? We have the luxury, smaller businesses sometimes do, of a start from scratch scenario where we're almost a complete HubSpot shop, which means I don't have to tie together my CRM or my marketing automation or any of those other parts. So as you're building your tech stack, it's something to think about. I don't have to knit together Salesforce and HubSpot because it's already one piece, and therefore a marketing dashboard is easily shared with everyone and emailed to everybody because it's coming straight out of one system. So it's one of those luxuries that a small business might have that might be a little bit harder on a bigger business because you've probably had legacy systems that aren't as easily knit together, and then those metrics probably have to be manually handled and or updated, and the sharing of metrics is not as simple. But those are all things to think about from a marketing technology perspective that I think all of us who have been through it really, really appreciate our marketing ops people who have helped to build the tech stack and keep it running. And I think there's maybe sometimes not enough attention given to those people who are really knitting it all together and making it all make sense for everybody else who's trying to consume it and make decisions from it.
Fantastic. I love this. I'm so glad we're recording this. This is,
Great.
like I said, a power panel. Okay, great. Anyone else before I move on to the next question from the floor? No? Okay. Isn't that the other thing we're all learning? How to do these Zoom things more smoothly and effectively. It's a battle. David Radin, old friend and a sales guru renowned. Nice to see you in the room here, David. Asks us, similarly, sales has been a face-to-face activity. Boy, has it ever, especially for large sales. How quickly, if at all, do you plan to deploy your teams back to face-to-face meetings, and how deeply? Wow, that is a great question. Anyone care to share if you know the answer to that question?
I'll jump in again here. This is certainly something we're comfortable answering. At the moment, we remain virtual. So we are relying on trending data, county by county. So we have a database that we're looking at. Within Comcast, we call it the medical assessment model, and we factor in a number of sort of pieces that say, if the cases are declining, in a particular county, if we see other markers that would suggest to us that they're safe, what we're going to kind of sort of phase back into it. And what we mean by that is we'll permit, as customers request, face-to-face appointments. The next phase of that, I think maybe, David, where you're going is, well, what does prospecting look like? Because, which is an entirely different animal altogether, because you may be prospecting face-to-face with a customer who doesn't want you to be there. And that one, we're being a little bit more cautious with. And so some of the things that we're doing is we're doing some advanced direct mail marketing with these sales professionals' identity, their contact information, their actual portrait, their actual professional photograph on the direct mail piece to say, hey, listen, we're in your neighborhood, we're here, so that we're not necessarily, doing something bad for the brand, while we're out there. And then certainly as safety protocols start to come a little bit more aggressively with more vaccinations, we'll start to see that loosen up a lot more. So the short answer to the question is it's a phased approach. And, to the extent, and by the way, there are some customers on the other flip side who get offended that you won't come out, because, some of them are saying, well, wait a minute, we're out here, we're wearing masks, and, why aren't you willing to come out, kind of thing? Or, are you saying that we're not being safe? And so it's just one of the things where it's a sort of client by client basis. But I think the answer of the day is to phase in.
I think that's a fantastic answer. Anyone else on that all important question, face to face? Wearing gloves,
I know that
sanitizers.
we've put it off until after July 1st. It's just, I think it's something that can put our employees at ease, knowing that we're not going day to day like, hey, are we going to be sending you back out there? It's something that, you know, we have strongly said, like, look, until this point, we're not even going to consider it. And we've also even said, look, into the fall, it's even a sketchy proposition for us right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You know, Jill, having attended the last event that I went to just days before we all got the shutdown, it was the Smart Business Dealmakers Conference, about 1,000 people there in last March. It was shot. I was nervous then. I mean, it was right there at the cusp. And I have to tell you, we've been effective, thankfully, in pivoting to doing things on Zoom and Slack and virtual, and, you know, sending a crew out safely to shoot videos. Thank goodness. Keeping the train rolling. But I'm with you. I'm in no hurry to go back to the big events as much as I miss them. And to David's point, they're very effective when you're closing bigger deals, any deal. But it's safety first. And I think part of that brand responsibility is making sure our employees really are safe as we figure this thing out, even if it is at the expense of some of that, unfortunately. Okay. I believe that may be all of the questions in the chat that I have. Audrey, please go right ahead.
Well, I have a question. If I, you know, since we're not into the breakout group, I could listen to this for a long time. Are any of you like actually actively engaged in every aspect of social media? So let me throw out some of the new ones. Okay. TikTok. That's not so new, but I just want to know if you use TikTok. I want to know if you use Clubhouse. I want to know, are you using Twitter Spaces? Where are you in that world? Can anyone, like, is that important? Or YouTube, where are you in YouTube? Where are you in, you know, like some of the other places? You all talked about LinkedIn, and you know, you talked about some of the things that are obviously business focused, you know, traditionally. But, you know, as we talk about a startup, you know, that Amy's talked about, like, hey, I'm not Comcast, I haven't been around, but people should know our values and they should know the things that we're working on. Hey, I'm niche, we're you know, hiring like rapidly, but, you know, we're in this new world. This is sort of our you know, values, et cetera. Just, you know, we can go down the list. But I'm really curious in terms of sort of this other stuff, you know, like, you know, someone's done something dumb and they'd get like 1 million views, right? But how do you sustain that? What does that mean? And is that an area that either haunts you, or do you just slice it off and say, we're not going there? No comment?
It's a great
comment. I'm a slicer.
That what?
I'm a slicer too, I think, Jill, but let's hear what your definition of that is.
No, I'm a slicer.
What do you say, Jill?
We're really strong on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We do a little bit on Facebook and Instagram. And I think it's just a matter of who our audience is. Like we're dealing mainly with communities and public works and civil engineers. And we want to seem like a really reliable source in the spaces that we play in. I just don't have the confidence currently in our ability to play in the space of TikTok and Snapchat and be a reliable source to those audiences. So I slice it.
Like it.
I'm almost exactly in the same place, Jill, is that LinkedIn feels very credible, is a great place for business to business discussions. Everyone feels comfortable there, that real business is happening. So LinkedIn for sure, and Twitter for sure. We have a Facebook presence, but it's not really where we put most of our effort. And then where I thought you might be going with that too is from a social media perspective. It's all because we are B2B. It's also not where I'm looking at it from why I might advertise on it. I'm not looking at it as it's really going to make such an enormous difference to our pipeline and our lead flow. It's a must-have because you need to use all the marketing tools, and it's a great communication device, but I'm not seeing the level of engagement that converts into real business from it. And so I give it its due. but it's definitely lower in the priority list than some other things.
I can't add too much to that. I would sort of agree. Ultimately, it comes down to what percentage of our target audience do I think I can reach through those mediums. And right now, I don't think we're going to be pioneers in that area. I will be mad as hell when somebody does it. Somebody in our field does it. They're going to use TikTok really creatively. And I'm going to have 50 shareholders sending me emails saying, did you see what they did? We should be doing this too. But right now, what I know is I have 60 hours of work to do in a 40-hour work week. And the time and investment to doing that well and with passion and with authenticity exceeds our ability to do it well right now. And I think we have other venues we're trying to explore. With that being said, I have to tell you, Audrey, I'm on Clubhouse. I can't figure the thing out. So I do not envision Schneider Downs ever really diving into the Clubhouse pool.
That's funny. What about anyone else? I mean, I'm thinking of it like talent attraction as well, not necessarily what you're talking about, Amy. I can see from your world, it's just like, oh, I can't deal with that. And exactly what's happening at Schneider. There's no way you can expand your view. But what about Comcast? I mean, they have entertainment. They have a lot of tools that, you can have access to. Do you take advantage of that?
Yeah, so great question. And it really depends on the platform. So if you're talking the Xfinity brand, it's going to be a lot broader than you're going to see on Comcast Business. If you're talking really about our NBCU properties, a lot broader than what you're going to see from Comcast Business. But I think it's a really important question, Audrey, specific to startups. And certainly one of the things that I've seen is regardless of platform, be it TikTok, be it some of these newer Clubhouse and such, it's almost as much about the offer as it is anything else, and your ability to create as much value in your message than anything else. So whether it's Instagram or whatever it is, the ones that really seem to be hauling in the traffic and by the way, I think the biggest mistake is that people associate TikTok and some of these others with gimmick. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. Just because you see gimmicky things on these platforms and because it is so casual, and back to Sean's point, speed over polish, that is true. But be mindful, be very careful of the gimmick because it could leave a lasting impression, not one that you want to leave. And I would say the offer and offering as much value as you can to pull people in, stage by stage, and maybe it's an activation, or maybe it's hey, here's a free invite to a thought leadership conversation, or whatever that may be. All those platforms I think would be very well. Just be careful of the content.
I think that's a great point, Aaron. And I would say, especially on our user side, we have a strong presence on TikTok and Instagram. And certainly when I was applying to college, the method of intaking information was not someone sort of having a text list to music of pointing to what are the top 10 schools in the US for engineering, right? It's a very different way of intaking information. And so, Aaron, your point around, I think, can get written off, loses a little bit of the fact that for a 16 or a 17-year-old that's trying to find the right school, that is how they want to intake that information, and that is effective for them. And so we've experimented a lot with our student ambassador program of really creating content that kind of delivers, creating stories that delivers the content in a way that that audience is ready for and is how they're getting everything else in their life. And so again, on the B2B side, like Jill and Amy, we're a little bit closer to LinkedIn and Twitter as our strategy, but a big part of who we are as a brand is driven by the authenticity and the energy that comes from our presence on Instagram and TikTok.
So I have one final question from my end that I'd love to hear. Are there any particular marketing initiatives that you had on deck for 2020 that you're definitely going to attack this year? Not that you'd like to, but you've said, yeah, we missed this, but we've got to put it in this year. Anything like that?
I'm happy
Jenna?
to take a first stab at that. Yeah, so one of the internal conversations we're having a lot right now is really leaning into more of an account-based marketing and sales strategy model. Obviously a hot term across the industry, but kind of tying back to what I shared earlier about personalization is, a big part of our messaging is every school is unique. And so we should be talking to them as unique schools, right? If we're gonna have that messaging, we want to make sure that what we're sharing with them has that same feel. And so we're doing some exploration of, what does an ABM model look like? What are the technologies that would support that? And kind of starting to get that roadmap in place. But that's something we're excited to pursue in the coming year.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Anything else on the 20 had to punt but going to attack this year question?
So I just want to jump in. First of all, this is amazing. It's 4:30. I'm trying to be really sensitive to everyone's time. We didn't go into breakout rooms, and I think that was fabulous that we didn't, honestly, because I think this is a rich conversation, and I'm so glad that we recorded it. I just want to be sensitive to everyone's time. I so appreciate Christopher's moderation of this and, facilitating it. It was great. I still have a lot of questions. I'm glad that I'm an early adopter on a lot of things, and sometimes erroneously so. So I loved when Amy put her blinders on physically and just like, I can't do that. We can't go there. And there's a lot of places to make mistakes too. And those mistakes very often in that, snappy world just can hang on for a long time. And sometimes, we can be too risk averse, and sometimes we miss an opportunity. So I'm always interested in hearing that. But Christopher, thank you so much. I don't want to, cut everyone off, but thank you.
No, thank you, Audrey. And thank you, panel.
Great if people are open to it, and just if they want to connect with the speakers and the speakers are okay with that, I'll leave that up to the speakers. I won't, sorry about that. I won't, force that on you. I don't expect that. But, part of the work that we do at the Tech Council is to make sure that the connections are just not meant in sort of a light way. They're really meant in a material way. I'm going to pick on Amy for a minute, and because she said, like, there's a lot of people here that are based in Pittsburgh that aren't, just because you're in Florida now, we're not going to use that against you, and everyone's traveling. I get it. But part of the strength of building a community is knowing one another and knowing what each other does, and also figuring out ways to buy and sell from one another as well. It doesn't mean that we have to be provincial and insular, but it means that gives us strength in terms of, weaving together a very strong platform. So I'm glad all of you, if you haven't had a chance to meet each other before, I'm glad you know each other now. We're very committed to making sure that these kinds of topics we have intimate conversations around them, and we build for tomorrow. It was a great mix. Shelby did a great job. She did a great job pulling together this array of people. This is just from all different domains, and people who are growing fast, to people who are in government work. And, Comcast has been a great partner. We've known Schneider Downs as long as I've been in Pittsburgh. So it's just awesome. So I again, thank you, Christopher, for taking the time with us. If you don't know anything about PMI, everything I mentioned at the beginning is really what they do. They really are a little bit of a secret here that have been around for 3 decades.
Longer than the 250 years I've been around, right?
Right? I mean, yeah, sorry about that. I know.
No, hey, you know what? I look good for 250. Yeah, we've been on, we celebrated our 30th year last year. So we're very excited. Yeah. Right. From the days when the cameras were as big as this office room, and now we do it a lot slicker.
Yeah, it's sort of cool if you're into marketing and that kind of stuff. When I did my community outreach and did rounds over there, they have stage sets and costumes, and just if you're into the creative stuff, it's really cool.
So fun.
All that they're doing. So again, thank you so much to each and every one of you for taking the time in your crazy days. And I know each and every one of you are doing amazing work building and growing your companies. I have a note here that says, don't forget to tell them that next week we have our big Beyond Big Data. conference next week. So there are people that are in there that are going to be talking about everything around data. We have some great speakers. And then we are having another panel. We're having another CMO Insights panel in April 14th, and it's going to be focused on B2C, which something Pittsburgh's more really B2B, although Aaron will tell you they toggle on both sides of the house there in terms of B2B and B2C. They've been tremendous, by the way. Comcast, through the digital divide, they really stepped up and did some work to make sure that people had access to technology right from the beginning, during those first crazy few months when kids didn't have the tools that they needed, and the example of people being in parking lots. So I am finished talking. I cannot thank you all enough. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Christopher. And I'd say cheers. Here's my water.
Here's my
Cheers.
water. Cheers
Cheers.
to all of you,
Cheers.
you wonderful folks, and to all of us for keeping this economy rolling through interesting times.
Yes.
And Audrey, to you and the council for all you've done for members and companies alike. Thank you.
Thank
you for
you.
having us.
Thanks to everyone.
Yes,
It was
thanks so
great.
much.
It was great seeing you. Nice meeting you, Jenna and Jill. And I've heard all about you, Amy. Nice seeing you, Mr. Florida. That's all I'm going to call you now. But isn't it too hot down there? I mean, it's beautiful in Pittsburgh today. It's amazing.
I love Pittsburgh when it's beautiful. I just wish it was beautiful more often.
And thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron, for being there. Thank you for all your leadership. See ya.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Enjoyed it.
everyone.
There.